Welcome to the People's Candidate Forum. Joining us now is former New York City Council Speaker Melissa Mark-Viverito, candidate for Congress in District 15. Thank you for your interest in representing this community. Let's begin. I will start off with an icebreaker question. Please share a 1 or 2 word intention you hold for today's interview.
The intention is to be a visionary.
Thank you.
First question is, the South Bronx has been disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 outbreak. With public health officials forecasting a potential second wave, what will you do if you are hired to respond to this ongoing crisis?
Well, thank you for that question. I mean, look, it's a hard question to answer in a very short period of time. Yes, we have been disproportionately impacted, but basically COVID has highlighted what many of us know, that there's great inequity in this country and that the 15th Congressional District has been at the receiving end of policies that have created this inequity. COVID specifically, obviously, is a healthcare crisis. In this country, we do not have universal healthcare. I believe in a Medicare for all system and something that we have to fight for and that we have the ability to enact, and that the crisis we are in now should definitely allow us to understand that we have a moment in time to push for substantive transformative change when it comes to our healthcare system. Additionally, we also need to build up our community health-based infrastructure. That means community clinics, that means federally qualified healthcare agencies, making sure that the federal government is putting more money so that we can put more services in communities that have these disparate and disproportionate impacts. And that's important. Find the federal funds that are available, make sure that we're bringing those resources into the community and supporting the work that's being done on the ground, and being able to amplify it and augment it with those additional resources. So one is a visionary idea right now, because we're not going to get to Medicare for all overnight, but the idea of supporting a system like that, but then bringing in the resources most immediately to be able to set up more testing sites, basically to provide proactive healthcare to communities like the one in the 15th Congressional District. So that to me is really important, and to continue to support the organizations that are doing the work on the ground. That is the way that we really are going to address the needs of the constituents in the district.
Thank you. And a quick follow-up on the universal health care point, the resources point. How do you propose the federal government pay for a universal health care plan?
Well, look, this is, as with any conversation, when we were having the conversation on ACA, there was town hall meetings and conversations with communities across the country. We have to be aggressive about engaging with our communities, me as a congressional representative, to really have a conversation with communities about why a universal system is critically important, and also how do we arrive at it. So it is always about where our priorities are, right? It is always about what are we going to have corporations pay their fair share when you have a Bezos who's actually making billions of dollars in this pandemic and they are not paying corporate taxes. There is ways that we can address the issue of resources and being able to pay for those things that are going to improve the quality of life of the constituents of the 15th Congressional District and communities across the country. Increasing the minimum wage to no less than $15 an hour, investing in our educational system, higher ed. Our kids are being saddled with tens of thousands of dollars in debt when they are the future of this country. We should be investing in their education. So making higher education accessible, meaning free. That it has to be a priority. Cleaning up our environment, where we have the greatest asthma hospitalization rates in this district, in the city of New York. We need to make sure that we are creating equity in the way that facilities are being sited. So there's a lot to do, but this, at the end of the day, is about a challenge around where our priorities are as a country, and that if we believe in these values, then we need to reprioritize where we get the money from.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. In regards to criminal justice reform and jails, Congressman Jose Serrano has stood with a large contingent of community members who oppose the city's plan to build a new jail in Mont Haven. What is your position on this plan, which would put the new jail on a plot of lands already earmarked by the community for an affordable housing development? What have you done, or what would you do to advance your position on this?
So for me, it always is about community engagement, right? And as a speaker, as a council member, large decisions were always made through extensive consultation. Now, we are at a moment in time, right, where a lot of reform and a lot of changes have been enacted in a very short period of time, from the time I was a council member, right, to now the present, when we're talking about decriminalizing low-level offenses, which means less people at Rikers Island. If we continue to reform and demand change, and we can whittle down the size of the people that are at Rikers Island, then we may arrive at a point, right, where we don't need any community facilities. That project, the idea of building any sort of community-based facility, which I see it as different from a jail per se, is not going to happen overnight. So we have a window of opportunity right now to continue to put in the changes in place so that the population on Rikers continues to shrink the way it is shrinking right now, and that we can have a truly different visionary justice system in the city of New York. So for me, it is about really continuing to push for those reforms to happen, reforms that I was definitely engaged and really involved in, and some of those changes that I was able to enact as a city council speaker. I'm committed to that. And obviously in constant consultation with communities, nothing is stagnant, right? From now to 4 years from now, things are going to be very different. The way we've seen 2 years ago to now, how things have become, so there has to be room to constant adjusting our policies and adjusting our approaches. And that's what I believe in.
Thank you. So I have a quick response question for you.
Yeah.
Please complete the following sentence. Today, I want to make the world
just.
Thank you.
Thanks. A question about public housing. Residents of NYCHA have been facing deplorable conditions for decades due to federal underfunding. What will you do to fix public housing with less public funding apparently available than ever before because of the current economic crisis?
Look, I agree with you that unfortunately we have seen the federal government kind of walking away from a commitment to public housing. I don't think that has to be the way, right? I believe, and I did sign on to the Homes Guarantee platform, which means, and has as part of it, us that believe in that and being congressional representatives of fighting to make sure that not only public housing, but truly affordable housing is a major investment from government. We need to have that as a reality. Also, there are a lot of other cities where public housing makes up a large percentage and a critical, a valuable housing stock, as it is here in New York. I've always said public housing is the most important and the cornerstone of affordable housing in the city of New York, and we cannot walk away from it. So building coalitions with other cities where public housing is as important as it is for us, and making sure that we are mobilizing communities around the country to make this an issue, one that is front and center, is important. Also fighting to make sure that in terms of capital repairs fund, that there is a consistent commitment every year to invest millions and billions of dollars in that fund so that it can help support existing public housing and improve the quality of that housing. Our housing stock here is older and therefore needs more maintenance and more repair. And those repairs have been forgotten over time, and therefore now we are in a real crisis. So the idea of investing in a fund where we can provide for those repairs. So I'm not giving up, on the federal government walking away from its responsibility to social housing, which is basically government subsidized housing. We need to build more of it. And the Homes Guarantee has a commitment to build millions of housing units, and I'm committed to that and fighting for that. So that's where I am. I represented the most public housing in the country, was in my city council district. This congressional district has the most also in the country. So I am committed to public housing. I have been a champion, a fighter, and I will continue to be that in Congress as well.
Thank you.
Thanks. I didn't want to have you say too much on that last question, because I do want to ask you now about affordable housing. Who is it really affordable for? Community members in this district have embraced the concept of community land trusts, which would take property off the speculative real estate market to develop deeply affordable housing. What specific actions will you take to ensure that there is affordable housing and home ownership for people in our community?
Okay, so that's a good question, and I'm proud to say that I was city council speaker I pushed, based on advocates, I always want to give credit to the advocates, who came to me and said that they wanted to establish a community land trust. It was something that I did champion. It was not well received by HPD and the city of New York. But based on that advocacy, we now basically have about 4 or 5 community land trusts across the city, one of them in the South Bronx that I basically supported. The idea of community wealth is really important. That is what a community land trust allows for, right? It really leveraging land, being able to create jobs, being able to create affordable housing. When we talk about worker cooperatives, that also is an idea of community wealth. I believe in those mechanisms, and I want to be an advocate in Congress that would support, right, and provide resources to efforts like the creation of community land trusts and encourage that to happen across the country, and have support from the federal government in doing that. That is the way that you, again, like I said, you create that community wealth model, which I'm so strongly supportive of. So that is definitely something. Changing the area median income, we've all talked about that. All right, that New York City gets lumped in with Connecticut and other areas is not really getting at the heart of what the true affordable number should be for New York City and for the Bronx. And so that has to be something that is a federal formula. So that has to be changed at the federal level. And then the investing of public dollars, of government dollars in the subsidizing and creation of affordable housing, part of that being home ownership opportunities. That's definitely something that government should be involved in to make it easier for people to be able to purchase and build that level of personal wealth for their families. It's important.
Thank you very much.
In regards to arts and culture, a majority of the creative workforce, meaning artists in all disciplines, are freelancers and or seasonal workers. COVID-19 has resulted in a dramatic loss of income for them. What would you do to help creative workers overcome these challenges?
Well, look, I mean, the federal solutions, unfortunately, federal government doesn't work as quickly as I believe they should. But the responses so far that have been adopted in Congress are really insufficient for the needs of people, right? They're not centered on the needs of people. The fact that you have our immigrant communities, particularly the undocumented, left out, the gig workers, the freelancers. If you really talked about a package that was going to help everyone, it would be centered on providing for the needs of those on the ground that are adversely impacted and even more seriously impacted by COVID, as are delivery workers, service workers, et cetera. So it is about fighting for federal responses that are truly rooted and centered on the most immediate needs of those affected. We have to be a voice for them. So that's something that I definitely propose to do. Also then working locally, right? There, like I've said, there is money that is available through federal agencies that sometimes we may not be aware that we should have access to and we can't have access to. I want to be able to help organizations on the ground that are doing that frontline work be able to navigate the federal system, find out where resources exist that they could probably tap into, and then work with the local city, right? The city and state through the small business services, et cetera, are trying to provide some sort of relief for these workers that you've mentioned as well. So we have to be very creative in our thought process and continue to demand that government be responsive, first and foremost, to the frontline workers. And that's what I'm going to lend my voice to that and be a part of that conversation.
The next question is around small businesses. Small businesses in our district were already hurting because of rent hikes, the influx of big box stores, and online sales. Now with the latest crises, COVID and looting, they have fallen further behind. What would you do to restart small business and promote entrepreneurship in our district?
Well, I mean, the issue of rent is always something that is problematic. I think in terms of the relief packages that were provided, the one that was available to small businesses obviously did not meet the demand and the need. So it has to be restructured and reshaped. My understanding is that the package that was passed recently is looking to do that so that it more directly meets the needs of localities and of local businesses. The issue of commercial rent control in some way has been a conversation that we're having at the state, some sort of rent stabilization program for businesses. But the issue of grants and making low interest, or not even, I would say grants, not even loans, grants available to small businesses as a way of helping them stabilize and be able to survive in this climate is something that I definitely support. I know that there is some advocacy that is happening around those issues, but I would want to support more federal funding with no strings attached, unlike what has been approved in the past. And so I want to advocate and go to Congress and make sure that the next packages, I'm hoping we don't go through a second round of this, but that we are able to provide true relief and support for small businesses, and do it in a way that has less barriers to access than it is now. But also working with, we have to work with the landlords as well. There should be a responsibility from RSA and other of these interests to make sure that they are providing either moratoriums or that they're writing off some of this rent for the small businesses. That's something that we need to really advocate to support our small businesses as well.
Thank you. How specifically would you provide teeth to the community-driven solutions that have been articulated over the years by some of the organizations hosting this forum and others that you may have engaged during your campaign?
Well, I mean, I've always been someone that, in terms of the way that I've negotiated any sort of, is that you do come to a set of agreements with the organizations as a representative, and then you codify that right into whatever land use decision you were voting on. That is how we've gotten some of the investments in our playgrounds, parks, public housing, etc. At the federal level, we'd have to figure out the same thing, right? But I'm someone that really believes in that community dialogue and helping arrive at a set of decisions, which I would then advocate to make sure that the administration adheres to. Again, that's important. Community-based decision-making is critical, and the voices of constituents have to be part of the decision-making process. I did that multiple times as a council member and as speaker during my tenure, that were able to come to agreements, which then I use that as a way of negotiating with the administration, that if anything is going to get adopted in this community, it has to model and it has to include these decisions that the community has arrived at. And we've been successful in that. So I believe in coming and signing agreements with community organizations, committing to it, and engaging with them on an ongoing basis so that they can see the results of the work that they've engaged in. So I would commit myself to being accessible, to be a visible representative, to engage in constant dialogue, to go over those agreements that were arrived at, to talk about how we're going to achieve them, what I'm committing myself to do. That is something that I've done. That's something that I will continue to do, so that those organizations that are part of this conversation today, you have that commitment from me, an ongoing dialogue, coming to an understanding on what we're going to agree to, and that I would support moving those forward.
Thank you. Okay, so I have another rapid response question. Please answer yes or no. Do you think drug use is a criminal justice concern?
Oh, that's a good question. No.
Thank you.
Thanks. Climate change. How will you use your leverage in the federal government to address the South Bronx's vulnerability to the impact of climate change? Please keep it brief as we're running a little over.
Yeah, I mean, basically this is about, we need more. The EPA needs to strengthen, right, its regulations against, they've been obviously deregulating substantially under this administration, supporting the Green New Deal, which includes, right, being able to invest in communities to make sure that they're dealing with resiliency issues. I believe the waste transfer stations and the siting of facilities needs to change. I believe in creating a whole brand new job sector through the creation of renewable energy, right, and the jobs that it can create, which are quality jobs. So all of that is incorporated in the Green New Deal, and also that it provides investments in public housing to make it more resilient, and obviously cutting down on emissions. So the Green New Deal is something that I definitely support, and I think in enacting that, it will be very, very helpful to the 15th Congressional District.
Thanks.
To wrap up our People's Candidate Forum today, how would you articulate a set of planning principles that will guide development that will serve to both preserve and grow the district? And how would you include the community in the adoption of these principles?
So I know that there's a lot of work that already has been done. So I think it's important to validate that. I would say that with all of people that have expressed an interest in defining what these principles are, I think it's a way of having a dialogue with me as the congressional representative. and coming to a greater set of issues and concerns for the district that I would support and that I would sign on to. So there is a lot of great grassroots work that is happening. As someone who is a grassroots activist, who comes from that environment, who believes in the community that is impacted, having the ability to decide what their future should be, I, as a representative, would be committed to an ongoing conversation with the community to arrive at those principles, and that I would commit to them to work with them on. So that is what I would do moving forward, and you have my commitment to that.
Thank you, Melissa Mark. And please answer this next one with a yes or no. Before today, had you taken a pledge against taking money from big corporations like real estate developers and other special interests?
Yes, I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
so
your interest in
much.
serving.
Yes.
As the next congressperson in District 15, the people of the district will make a decision on June 23rd. Be well and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.